Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I am joined by Chris McElwain. We're here to talk about Dundee United 0, Celtic 0. It was a stalemate at half-time, Chris. We spoke about a different Celtic coming out, a more decisive, clinical Celtic coming out in the second half. It was a bit more of the same, bit of a change of personnel, but, Celtic kept champing the door and we could not get in. There were chances, there were moments, but it was one of those days that we just did not get the breakthrough. We can go on about the sickness and the omission of some of our key players today, but not the best day at the office for Brendan Rodgers' men, was it?
I think you called it. He said it was a stalemate. I mean, that was stale, mate. That was bad.
Well done.
It was. Yeah, that's all I've got at the moment, to be honest. Look, first of all, it's not a crisis. It's an off day, right? And it's 2 points dropped, absolutely. Credit to Dundee United as well. I'll say that up front. I mean, they did what they had to do. They've definitely, a point gained for them. I think they set up well. But our performance was not good enough. I think we can give the defence a pass. I think they did their job today, no problems. I think they actually contributed quite meaningfully to the build-up and attack as well. But our forward players were off it today. We could not break Dundee United down. Yang and Palmer, for me, their time at the club should now be up. I think they should go.
And not just based on today, Chris. We spoke about this before the game, didn't we?
No, I said that any games they got picked for prior to January should be the last chance saloon. And I felt, certainly in Lewis Palmer's case, I thought that ship had kind of already sailed. I think today has just confirmed that I don't think Yang has got what it takes to offer what we need at this club. And I think I think we have to do some real business in January. This team is good. They've done great things this season. We've seen good performances domestically. We've seen good performances in Europe. We're going through a bit of a creativity slump at the moment. Almost like we're struggling to fill that Matt O'Reilly-shaped hole in midfield just now. I think Rio Hatate, good effort today, but it didn't really come off for him again. And I don't know, he's just not having his best form just now. I was a bit surprised that McCowan went off before him today, particularly as Hatate was carrying a booking. It was nice to see Ida and Kyogo play together. I think actually we created more chances having both of them on the park. Gilt-edged chances missed by Kyogo. I mean, that chances. I'll defend the wee man at the help, but that's
the moment.
You've got to take those moments. That's the one.
Yep.
So frustrating day. Nobody will be more frustrated than the manager, I'm sure. Certainly, and certainly the fans. But as I say, you take the hit, you get back up, you move on. It's 2 points dropped. We've built up a lead through playing well this season. We'll put this one behind us and move on to the next game.
We absolutely will, because that moment, and if you were going to allow that to drop to anyone, it's going to be Kyogo. We're talking, of course, about the one that was laid onto him by Ida. The initial ball by Stephen Welsh, who we were bigging up for his passing range and how he had created one or two chances in the first half. He scores that goal. We're sitting here and we're going on about how brilliant the change was to bring on Ida and keep Kyogo in the park, and the whole hue, the conversation is completely different, but he doesn't score. And that's the thing. And it was unusual for him because it was almost as if the decisiveness was gone. Remember the other week where he did that incredible AI cheat thing where he put his foot around the
leg
ball.
Shuffle.
Yeah.
And
it was almost as if without thinking there was that instinctive finish, the control and finish. That wasn't there. It was the absolute opposite, almost like he doubted himself. Next thing you know, he didn't actually do anything. It was a great wee flick by Ida. It was a brilliant pass by Welsh, a similar kind of through ball that he played in the first half to Yang, and Yang failed to get the ball to a Celtic jersey. So, we'd have been sitting here giving it all the big licks about, Welsh doesn't play much, but when he does, he makes a contribution. It wasn't to be. And by the way, not the only chance Kyogo had. I think there was also the one where he's carrying the ball and he tries a long-range effort and it kind of goes wide. It was one of those days where we simply did not create enough chances. The goalkeeper didn't work hard enough for me. If you look at the stats, I've not actually looked at them since full time. How many shots did we have on target? Because I think by 70 minutes it was maybe one, if that.
Yes.
So not good enough in that respect. And people are picking up on the lack of creativity. I'm going to bring as many of you into the chat as possible. It's not just about Chris and I and what we think. It's all about your reaction, with the understanding that even when it's just an unhinged draw and it's not a crisis and it's not a disaster, the emotion runs high and people get frustrated and sometimes vent on the comment section. So let's get some of your thoughts coming in. I'm going to start off with Paul McLean. Still some dead wood at the club, obviously. For anyone who hasn't listened to me over the last week, I had been talking a wee bit about this, and I stopped calling it dead wood, Paul, because people take offence to that. I prefer to call it, non-contributing players, basically. And I actually thought over the piece, Stephen Welsh played all right today. He played fine, right? The defence was pretty strong and resolute when they had to be. It wasn't as though we had a deluge of attacks from Dundee United, but when we were under the cosh, I think we dealt with it fairly comfortably. There was what was described as a stramash near the end of the game. That was about the only moment where it was hearts in the mouth. You didn't know where the ball was going to land.
Yeah.
How often have we seen that at a game of football where wherever the ball lands, next thing you know, it's in the net. So thankfully that didn't happen. Welsh for me still isn't the answer, though. I think that Stephen Welsh, the stats I gave before the game, this was his 6th to 8th game of football for Celtic in 6 seasons. At the age of 24, that you're not progressing enough. If you look at last season, the season before, Stephen Welsh made 20 appearances combined over 2 seasons. It's not enough, right? If you add on this season, he's made 22 in 2.5 seasons. So I don't think he's going to make that impression. You want someone to be knocking on the door constantly. You want that scenario that we have at the moment with CCV, Trusty and Scales. You want that 4th player to be as up for a jersey as the other 3. A wee bit like the midfield, like we discussed. But on today's show, and I thought Welsh did okay. You then start picking away at some of the other non-contributors in that squad. Nawrocki can go. So if you're allowing Nawrocki and Welsh to go, then you bring back Dane Murray from Queen's Park and you buy another defender in the same kind of mould that we have been looking at recently. So yes, that's what I would do for sure. You look at the full-back scenario. Everybody knows there's definitely a situation at the moment about the left-back scenario. Brendan Rodgers was talking again. Greg Taylor came in. He played that inverted role like we suggested at the beginning of the game that he would. Chris, he was more inverted than anything. All the play seemed to be going right down the centre. We know what's happening in January. Greg Taylor isn't going to be offered what he wants. So it's now a case of whether or not there can be a compromise. Can he meet us halfway? Can him and his team meet us halfway? If not, Celtic will buy a left back. Simple as that. Bernabeu will be shipped out. Baye might stay till the end of the season. Right back, Alistair Johnson gets injured and then Tony comes in. And that, for me, that fractured nature of the right-hand side was one of the biggest issues for us today. All season we've spoken about the relationship between AJ and Kuhn. I've also thrown Engels in at points this season. I think that all 3 of them have had a good understanding. Nothing down the right today, Chris. Nothing. No. Nothing at all was created down that side. The one moment where it should have been was when Welsh played Yang in, and Yang had the time to look and find a jersey, cross the face of goal, and that's it. You're a goal up in the first half. It didn't happen. So that's an area we need to look at as well. So Deadwood, I get what you mean, Paul. It's more for me, if you're not contributing, let's get a player in who will contribute. Now, Albion Rovers Fans TV, great to see you popping up on the chat as well, and I hope your team's doing well. Celtic, was it Fans TV? Was it them that were gifted the super duper cameras from Mark Miller? You know, the artist, Mark Miller.
You might be right, actually,
Yeah, he does the graphic novels, doesn't he?
That's right, Mark Miller, Did Tino do, it wasn't Sin City, was it Sin City? Taken. Yeah,
he did that. And he likes to write in into the storylines that anyone with a villain might well be a Rangers fan. I don't know if you've ever seen any of that work. Brilliant. Wolverine with a Celtic strip.
I was going to say they're not doing Wanted, but it was done like that as well. That's right.
He managed to get the hoops on Wolverine. Right, there we go. Sorry, I digress. Albion Rovers Fans TV. Celtic need a third striker. 100% agree with that. And a winger.
Yes.
Palma and Yang aren't good enough. I agree with all of that. I do agree with all that. It was good to see Ida and Kyogo on the park at the same time. I've heard all the arguments. In fact, the arguments originated pre-Maida from Liam Carrigan arriving at the club. He said Maida can play through the middle. So I get that. But Rodgers did touch on the fact that he had a plan for a third striker and we still don't have it. So yes, something that might spark us into life could have worked here. Now, here's another thing. I'm bringing this up because I don't particularly agree with this comment, but I want to bring it up to discuss it. Ridiculizer says, hopefully Hatate taking the top off is a sign of things to come in January. Hatate, for me, he's inconsistent, right? It's just the way he is. But I don't want him to leave. I don't want him to leave, and certainly not in January either. I think he's an asset to this football club. He's not going to be a 9 every week, but he never has been. He was never that player under Ange Postecoglou. The thing about taking off his jersey, right? I noticed when he did, and I'm thinking to myself, Hatate, he's like Petrov in that he runs himself into the ground, right? He always looks as though someone's thrown a bucket of water over him. He's sweating buckets. Is he just take the top off to get a layer off because he's absolutely gassed? I don't know, right? But I think I heard someone shouting at him as he was walking around the park, and I think he reacted in with respect to looking up at whatever was said. Probably something over nothing, to be honest with you, Chris. But Hatate, for me, is not the type of player we should be moving on. I go back to the previous comment from Paul. Move on the non-contributing players. Even if you're moving on 2 centre-halves and bringing in one of quality, move on 2 wingers, bring in one of quality. Move in 2 midfielders, and I'm talking Home and Kwon. Bring in Lennon Miller. That's what we need to do with this squad for me. Hatate's a quality player. Wasn't great today. Wasn't the worst player on the park today.
No.
You don't get rid of a player like Hatate.
No, he's contributed too much to this team. We know what he can deliver when he's on his game. Today he ran himself into the ground. He showed good energy. We were just up against a really resolute defence today, and we just didn't have the creative spark that we needed. And the occasions where we did break through, we were wasteful with our chances. So it's I think what you got to remember is Hatate's walking off. He's looking fed up. He's looking frustrated. Well, we're in the process of dropping 2 points. Of course he's frustrated. Of course he's not happy. I want my players to go off and be unhappy that they didn't manage to make the contribution they wanted to do. I mean, he should be fed up because, Hatate, like a lot of the players on the park, didn't play as well as we know they can today. So it's as simple as that. But I think you're right. There are players in that squad that for me shouldn't be there. Stephen Welsh came in, we've spoken about him. He's done his job today, but his job is the backup player when the first choice players are out against a team that isn't going to give you much to worry about defensively. And that's the level that Stephen Welsh is at. And I mean that with the greatest of respect to him. I hope he goes on and has a great career. I don't think he's got much more to contribute to this club. And it's a shame because you would love to see every Scottish player who comes through the ranks, make the grade. There comes a point where it's no longer about potential. It's about, can you actually go out there and deliver consistently week on week? I did notice at the end of the match, Welsh was limping again towards the end. So,
did you see the niggle though? Did you actually see why he was limping, Chris?
I saw him holding the back of his leg. I wasn't sure what caused that. Was it?
Sorry to interject, and somebody has given you another doppelganger. Mark Miller looks like Chris. I can't disagree with that now that I've seen it.
Every time I'm one of you, every single time.
Oh, there's a few though. There is a few. I mean, it's better than Jamie Oliver, right?
That's true.
What was mine? Rick Astley. Aye. Right. Okay. So Stephen Welsh. Before I go into this, I thought Stephen Welsh played really well. I've made my feelings known about Welsh in terms of us progressing and having a core group of players that no matter what the situation is, whoever gets thrown in there is going to be up to scratch. Welsh did okay today, I felt. But yeah, the niggle was actually, he's facing his own goal. He's facing Schmeichel. You're in the last minute of the game and he beats the United player to the ball and plays it back. The United player then kicks him. And it's after Welsh. It's after he's played it back to Schmeichel, right? And it's all these wee niggly things, right, that teams do get away with, that nobody seems to focus on. I thought Dickinson was his usual atrocious referee today. He's a poor ref. He's really poor. Really poor. And I think he was today again. I mean, the one from the first, by the way, I'm not making excuses. It was nothing to do with the referee's performance. I'm just talking about wee niggles that happen in every single game, where players come through after. The Aberdeen player's the one I've always gone on about. Nielsen. I've always gone on about. It's Nielsen, isn't it?
Yes.
Who,
continually fouls, continue, and gets away with it. I think 9-10 fouls. Yeah.
Every time, right? And it's all these wee things that I think you do pick up, right? We pick them up when we win. We pick them up when we draw, as we have done today. The one that really annoyed me was McGregor's in the first half, where McCowan's done that beautiful wee touch, and
push.
it's opened up a wee bit for McGregor. He's about to pull the trigger, and he's taken out, you know. So we get the free kick, but is that enough at times? So thanks everybody for getting involved. Loads of people saying that they're hoping that Ange comes in not only for Hatate but all 3 Japanese players. Come on, Maeda.
Short memories.
Maeda scored what I have called the best League Cup final goal in living memory last week. You know, there's a wee bit of reaction going on here, and I get it because I've been guilty of it myself. So let's bring in as many of you as we possibly can. We've got Brian Harkin coming in. Celtic need another right back, a winger, and a striker. And if Baye leaves in January, a left back. Even if it doesn't, I actually think, Brian, that we're going to be short there because the left back situation is, and obviously there has been talk of the big man Clarkson. It was Danielle's fault. She mentioned him first. KT. Right, so there's been mention of him. We've done our digging. I'm not sitting here going, oh, you know, a confirmed source has informed us of the following. But we do a bit of digging with people that we know who are in the game. And Kieran Tierney has said that he wants to come to Celtic. Brendan Rodgers made it clear during the summer he wanted him. The injury kiboshed all of that. Obviously, the update from Arsenal, add 2 and 2 together. Will we be interested? Well, Roger says we're always interested in quality players. So the left back is going to be a situation. It's also, obviously, there's a 3-pronged kind of approach here. You've got Baye in on loan, not really playing much in terms of minutes at the moment.
Yep.
You've got Taylor getting a game. I think Rodgers is playing a blinder in that respect because he's saying to Taylor, you're my man, I want you to stay. But the money men, you know, Chris Mackay, and it gets to that stage, they'll deal with the contract. I've told them I want you to stay. If they can't come to a compromise, Taylor will be away, and there's no point leaving him leaving for nothing.
No.
So there might be a bit of movement there for Craig Taylor in January, Chris. And then the priority of a left back becomes even more so.
Oh, it's paramount then,
yeah. Because all you've got left is Bernabei, and if we can make some kind of money on Bernabei and move on to Brazil, strike with irons hot, great. For me, I've said before, it's the best thing to do. I know Quinny disagrees with that, and there's a couple of other Acsom contributors. Lawrence would have a look at him. I'd just move him on. Because beyond that, you're looking at some of the younger guys, or maybe Adam Montgomery. So left back is going to be huge come January. Do you think that we can still do a deal with Taylor? I'm delighted that he had a wee haircut today and got rid of those locks. Going back to peak Taylor.
Absolutely. Listen, I like Greg Taylor. I think I'm grateful that we've had him at the club. I'm grateful for everything he contributed to the past success. I thought today he had a decent game, in a very average collective performance. Again, I think that's down to not having to do the usual defensive work. I think you see most of Greg Taylor's best attributes when he's coming forward. He's overlapping, and I think he was actually more creative for me than say Lewis Palmer was. But the fear with Greg Taylor is Greg maybe rates himself higher than many of the fans and certainly maybe the manager and the club do. That's not to say, by saying to Greg Taylor, look, you're not. It sounds a horrible way to say it, but you're not deserving of the top pay bracket or the top tier pay bracket at Celtic. Doesn't mean that you're undervalued. It's just saying, look, we recognise your value to the team, but that's reserved for your captains and your top goal scorers and those kind of guys. And it's maybe that has been a wee bit unfair on Greg Taylor. I think Greg Taylor really suffers with the fact that I don't think he's built to be a natural defender. He's like me. He's a wee guy. He's a short guy. You put me up against somebody like Lloyd's size, for example. Lloyd would be knocking 7 bells out of me every game. I'm not built for being a defender. If I was ever built for being a player. So I see that with Greg Taylor. I would love to keep Greg Taylor in some capacity. But do I think there's better players out there we could get? Do I think Kieran Tierney is an upgrade in Greg Taylor? The answer to both of those questions is yes for me. But that's with no disrespect to Greg Taylor. I do rate the player. I do like him. I think our team would be better to have him in it in some capacity. I just think if we want to make meaningful progress in this team in Europe, we need somebody that can do the defensive work that Greg Taylor cannot do. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, well, again, I think it would have been a situation we were looking at even before the Greg Taylor contract, because at the beginning of the season, my take on it was Taylor's your backup. You bring somebody else in and Taylor's your backup, and then you start looking at a lot stronger at that stage, I think when Trusty comes in, Scales becomes your backup, and I think that beyond that, at centre half, we don't really have one. I mean, Welsh played today, and Nawrocki was on the bench, but these guys, for me, they don't step in. If we go to Aston Villa and we need a point, and we start with one of those guys, are you confident going into that game?
No, forget it. But I think, I honestly, I wouldn't put Scales or Taylor in the backup category. I would put them in the plan B category. I don't like this form of backup saying, well, actually, you're not quite as effective as the guys in front of you. I just think, for certain games, we'll need a different set of players. Scales, for me, can come in. I mean, we saw it in the Cup final. He can come in, he can do a different sort of job to Trusty.
He done some job in the Cup final.
And he done some job.
Especially that free kick he gave away. I mean, that was the best part of his performance.
Absolutely.
Stone wall free kick.
I'm just going to go, a counterpoint. That made my Christmas party. That made my Christmas and New Year. That was great. But I do think, Taylor's the kind of guy who, rather than see himself as a backup, could actually say, well, okay, we've got a player who's more solid, more traditional kind of left back, and plays effectively in games. But then when we're actually looking for a goal, we're looking for a breakthrough, we need a little bit of creativity down that side. Taylor's your man you turn to and you bring him on. And I do think in games maybe where we're very much on the front foot, those are games where a Greg Taylor can come in and do potentially just as good a job. But I think when you're in games in Europe where you're against a team that's going to put the pressure on you, we're pinned back a bit, you need someone that's got more of that defensive discipline. So I still think that they're guys who can contribute to the squad quality. Palma and Yang? No, not for me. Absolutely not. If those guys now, for me, don't get close to a shirt. I mean, the fact that Palma's got the number 7 shirt pains me every time I see him coming on. If I'm honest,
I'll tell you what, it's a disgrace of the legacy of Miku that he has got the number 7 jersey. You're absolutely spot on. What I'm going to do here, right? And Freddie Lundberg, I'm going to bring this up. And Chief Kieran, how many times did the ref play the ball today? That's the sign of a bad referee. That's the sign of a bad ref. If you're in the road of the game, your positional play is terrible, which is massive in terms of refereeing. So, yeah, he did, Kieran, and it's not for the first time I've noticed it with him. I'm going to bring this up, right? I'm bringing this up because, listen, it's nothing against Dundee United. It would have been much, much better if we came away from Tannadice with a wee last-minute win and all the rest of it. How much different was today's game than the game up at Pittodrie the other week with a horrible winds? I mean, today it was 55 miles per hour winds. I think at Pittodrie it was 60. So how much different? Yeah. Don't come back at me and say 5 miles per hour. How big a difference was because I felt it was a very similar game. It was a very similar game that was being affected by the conditions. It's not an excuse. But what I'm trying to say here is I don't think you can play your normal fast-flowing game in that respect. So the Aberdeen game at Pittodrie, there was that moment, and that moment was taken by Hatate. Today, the moment wasn't taken by Kyogo. For me, it's as simple. That's the margins that we're looking at here, Chris.
Yes,
I'm not throwing the toys at the pram or the baby out with the bathwater. That's the margin we're talking about today. The moment, and it's the player you that wanted it to land to, wasn't taken, and at Pittodrie it was.
Yeah, stars aligned. It was what you wanted. It was the brilliant pass, brilliant move. One touch, the man you'd want to take the chance, and it just, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. Conditions-wise, I mean, like we always say, it's the old cliche. Both teams have got to play to the conditions. I do agree. I think the conditions can sometimes affect your natural way of playing. And I think today, you could see that it was affecting the way the game was playing. It was affecting Dundee United as well. I mean, they were trying long balls forward in that second half, and they were flying straight into Schmeichel's arms. I mean, it was. I don't think conditions suited either team today, but we should have enough about us to play through the conditions. I know it's easy for me to sit here in a nice warm office and say that, but the fact is that our guys should be able to play through those conditions. We should have enough quality to beat a team such as they are at the moment in Dundee United. And that's no disrespect to them, but they've just come back up. They're trying to find their feet again in the top division, and we are the champions elect. So we should be absolutely, head and shoulders above them. But they rose their game appropriately today. We couldn't lift our game the way we should have done. It is what it is. It's, 2 points dropped. We've got a margin because we've been better than everybody else this season. So you know what? I think it's somebody made in the comments. Nobody will remember this game come May.
Yeah, someone did, and it's Jungle Lion who said that. There it is. Won't remember.
I knew that. I always remember what Jungle Lion says. So that's
you're right. You're spot on, and that's why. Yes, I'm disappointed, but I'm not going to kick off in relation to the performance, which wasn't great. Brendan Rodgers is getting a wee bit of stick. I'm going to bring that up. Barry O'Sullivan says, Lewis Palmer. By the way, I was having a bit of a joke when I mentioned Miku and Freddie Ljungberg. Come on. I've made my feeling known about Palmer. I think the biggest issue with Palmer is his discipline. I think it's, and I don't mean that with red and yellow cards. I mean the discipline of play. So he goes on there. The one thing you can't do is lose possession cheap play, and he did it. He did it in injury time. He did it in the 6-minute injury time. This is the kind of thing that I think would be a manager's worst nightmare, where you could probably watch a player on a training park and his technique's brilliant, and you could probably ask him to take free kicks, and they're beautiful free kicks, beautifully taken, his technique is there, and I don't think we're going to deny that, but his decision making isn't, and his discipline isn't. And there was a couple of wee moments where he's ran up to try and win the ball, when he's done one of the ones where he's hiding his face. Oh, don't hit, not the face. And it's like, come on, take one for the team, So for me, that's where I am with Palmer. Lewis Palmer was so predictable on the left wing, always looking to come back on his right. Very poor second half from him, but it's all we had, Barry. I think the bigger issue, the deeper issue is it's all we had. It was a flip of the coin as to who started today. Was it Yang? Was it Palmer? You know what I mean? It was so unpredictable as to what you were going to get from either of the two players. And then when one of them comes off, the other one's going to have to come on, and you're in the same kind of situation again. So, yeah, going back to the earlier point about January, there's a bit of work to be done. I'm going to take 2 points, and then we're going to discuss it. The first one coming from Lebobski, 25, Maida is 80% luck, followed by Mick Maida is a star. I'm veering more towards you, Mick. I'm going to say to anybody else who's given Maida a hard time today, just watch that goal back against Rangers last week. Oh, come on. Watch his penalty kick. Watch his penalty kick that won us the game. Maida is a star, Chris. Yeah. Regardless of what happened today, Maida's a star.
I'll not hear a bad word said against him. And do you know what? He was closest to scoring from us outside of that Kyogo chance, that header that had to be saved. I thought his movement today was good. I thought he was the reason why there was always the ability for players like Ralston to hit that ball, the wee dinky ball over the top. It's the running of Maeda. I thought he was excellent today, without again being part, recognising he was part of kind of an average overall performance. But I thought he was one of the standout players. I thought actually Maeda, McCowan, and I'd say that the fellas in the back line were actually the top performers today. I think unfortunately McGregor, Hatate, I think maybe just a little bit off it today. But I couldn't criticise Maeda today. Okay, would be nice to have the goal, but I thought he put in the effort today. I thought his movement was good. I think, as I say, we just came up against a really resolute Dundee United defence today, and just things didn't align for us.
No, the conditions weren't great. The fact that we were missing quite a few players through illness didn't help, and we came up against a very structured and disciplined Dundee United defensive unit. Simon for Denny. Liam McGrandle's Denny boy, wasn't he? And he was giving us the live music on Thursday night.
He was excellent. Yeah, he was really, really, really good, except for apart from when the power went out. But I thought I have to give a shout out to the crowd though, because when the power went out, and I think you were backstage at the time, but everybody that was at the crowd started singing. So absolutely phenomenal effort from everyone that attended. I mean, that was great. Really great night actually. And actually want to give a wee shout out on that just while we've got 2 minutes. I met a pair of brothers there, and they were attending the event. It was actually a Christmas present from their mother. I think it's Marie McKinnon, but she goes by Mary McKinnon from Chapel Hall, and she watches Acsom every day, I believe. So I did say I'd give them a wee shout out. So Merry Christmas, Mary, and your boys hopefully enjoyed the show.
Yeah, well done. Thank you for that, and have a great Christmas, as you said, Chris. Simon Fideni, Taylor felt like the only player pushing for the win at the end. He did. Yeah, he was taking responsibility. That's what you want. Good shift. What you want. Yep. Don't hide in situations like this. Always make yourself available. Coffee, KT will drop 90k a week. If he does come back, he'd be crazy. We know that you can structure a deal with a signing on fee, etc., and all that kind of stuff to make it up. That was actually, in the summer, when we were speaking about this, Kieran Tierney and, believe it or not, Scott McKenna were on the shopping list for Brendan Rodgers. He wanted both of those players, but McKenna, he was getting a freebie, and he wanted to aggregate and combine his transfer value into his wages and that totaled an additional £3.5 million. So we allowed him to go to Spain instead. But it's something that the club can make happen if we want to make the deal go through. Yeah. Magnet 67, surely the Basra Raulstinho CSC will get a shout out now. Well, you would anyway, Magnet 67, with a name like that. Obviously, we need to get Tony Ralston to visit you for your end of season players dance. Absolutely, like the old days. David Harvey. The same conversation in regard to Kyogo will be the same conversation about Hatate, with same people dipping heads in the sand. Both are not up to Rodgers' style. Listen, that's a debate that we could have. Of the 3 Japanese players that came in who are still at the football club, who do you think is the one who is playing best under Brendan Rodgers, Chris?
I think Maeda, without a doubt. I think Kyogo is struggling, not necessarily always through his own performance, but I think the system doesn't feed his abilities, which is to get the ball to him quickly, allow him to get in behind, allow him to play that almost that kind of advanced forward poacher role, which he's so good at. And I don't think the system plays to Kyogo's strengths. And I think, when Kyogo does have a good game, he's got to work really hard to do it. Kyogo, for me, is the type of player that he's not going to, if he gets one chance a game, he's not going to score that chance. He needs about 2 or 3. It reminds me of an old Italian player called Filippo Inzaghi, who had great success at Juventus. But for every one of the many goals he scored, he'd miss about 300. He was one of these very frustrating players in terms of, missing chances or finding himself offside. Kyogo, a little bit different, but I just think we're not creating enough chances for this striker to feed off goals. He's getting one half chance or one gilt-edged chance like he got today. But throughout a 90 minutes plus game, that's not enough. We need to create more chances for him. So Kyogo, I think, can play under this system. We just need the players around them to be more creative, particularly on the wide areas. I think Kuhn's done that pretty well. Maeda, his delivery starting to improve. But yeah, Kyogo will play. Hatate, he's a difficult one. I think he's definitely got the energy to play in this system. I don't know if we've got the right balance in midfield at the moment for Hatate. When he ventures forward and he can play those crisp passes, and when they come off, fantastic. He does lose possession a lot, and his moves do break down at him a lot. I think we're trying to play him a little bit like an old-fashioned number 10, and I don't think that's quite his style. I think he operates better as one of these kind of roving midfielders that's high energy and can mark players, that kind of thing. I thought in the European game he played, trying to remember if it was, can't remember if it was Atalanta or Brugge, but I thought he played absolutely phenomenal, ran himself into the ground. And it wasn't about what he was doing offensively, it was the defensive work he was doing and the movement and the helping to build the play. So I think there's a place for all 3 players in this system. I think if we add quality in January, that can maybe allow us to maybe take the burden off some of these guys a little bit. Might be the best approach forward. But I'd be loath to see any of them go. Same as you.
Yeah, but for me, my opinion is Bernardo should start every game. I don't think he's put a foot wrong.
I would agree with that, actually. I would agree with that. I think for me, he looks the most complete midfielder.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes in the upcoming games. Listen, like Jungle Lion said, he often gets the first word. I'm going to give him the last word. As Jungle Lion said, see come May, we'll look back on this game and say, oh, that was the day that Celtic went up to Tannadice and there was the illness and we were missing quite a few players and it was horrible conditions. We came away with nothing each. That's all that you'll think about. It won't be a disaster. It won't be a turning point. It won't be a sliding doors moment, okay? It's just one of those days and we move on. Celtic still sitting pretty at the top of the league. We're 9 points ahead of nearest challengers, Rangers, followed by Aberdeen, a point worse off than Rangers. Dundee United are sitting in 5th position. They're having a decent enough season so far, and a special mention to the Jambos who are sitting bottom of the league. There you go. For all the wee Jambos that might be tuning in, you're sitting bottom of the league, guys. So thank you all for getting involved. We will be back, as always, at 12:30 come Monday afternoon. We will be live all the way through the festive period, taking a wee break on Christmas and New Year's Day, but I'll do a wee pre-recorded message, like my version of that message you get on Christmas Day, probably, Chris, but a wee bit better.
Well, I know which one I'll be watching. It'll not be the one that's on TV. I'll be watching Acsom.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad I've picked up for that mad virus, or it would have been something like the Reverend Ian Jolly sitting there. No being very happy with myself. Right, we'll get that out, and it'll go out at 12:30 as always. It won't be the interactive blockbuster of an hour, but it will be content nonetheless. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I said I was going to give JL the last message. I'm just going to leave this one out there. I'm just going to throw it out there. Just throw it out there. There you go. You know what to do. Celtic board, give us a wee Christmas present.
I've got the Bumblebee strip in there. I've got the double denim. It'll be, if that happens, I will wear that. I will wear the complete outfit. I'll even get my hair done the same way as Jonas.
It's getting there already, mate. Right. Thank you all for getting involved, and join us again 12:30 tomorrow for a Celtic State of Mind.
Hail, hail, folks.